Hey friend, if you've been thinking about getting your first vintage sewing machine, maybe because you're tired of buying breakable plastic ones, maybe you gave your plastic portable machine away, perhaps you just want something eco-friendly and budget-friendly. Well, today I'm sharing the exact tips I wish somebody had told me about when I started getting my first vintage sewing machine. Vintage machines can be absolute workhorses, but buying one without knowing what to look for can feel intimidating. So let's make it simple. For a lot of us who are burned out from work and consumer culture, a vintage machine is a small way of opting out, choosing quality over constant replacement. My first tip is to look for machines that still turn without the power. When you turn the hand wheel, things should still move, even if there isn't a belt to the motor and the power is off. This means that the mechanism and the inner workings of the machine are still likely to be working, so investigate further. When you turn the wheel towards you, the needle bar should move up and down, and the feed dogs, those are the teeth at the bottom, should move smoothly. There shouldn't be any scary noises, no grinding, no clunking, nothing weird sounding. It should be pretty smooth. If the hand wheel has a clutch on it, which is a smaller wheel inside of the hand wheel, parts may not move because the clutch isn't engaged. Twist the clutch to feel a resistance and then turn the hand wheel towards you again, and things should be moving. If the mechanism doesn't move or the machine sounds like it could be in one of the Conjuring movies, walk away. This needs to be a simple machine for your first vintage machine, not a nightmare that you have to deal with. Many folks might panic when they see rust. A light surface rust can usually be cleaned off. You want to open up the sewing machine and look at the rods, the cogs, and the parts. If you see any pitting on the internal metal parts, or it looks dimpled, or if it is super orange and crusty, you want to pass on this machine too. You want to make sure to check the electrical cords, if the machine has electrical cords. If you've got a treadle or a hand crank machine, then there won't be any electrical cords. But if there is power cords, do they look like they are flaking? Has somebody wrapped some tape around them? When you move the wiring, does it snap? Does it crackle? Or does it feel crunchy? If it does, definitely don't power on the machine, and you should really pass on that machine too. Unless you happen to know an electrician in your life or somebody who is confident in doing those things. And it might be a good idea to take them with you on your vintage sewing machine sourcing trips so they can take a look at it too. But otherwise, you'll want to pass on that machine. Okay, my next tip is check the bobbin case. Now, I bought a vintage Kenmore 117 for about 20 bucks at the thrift store, and I did not check that there was a bobbin with the machine. And I wish that I had, because once I got it home and I realized there was no bobbin in the bobbin case, in fact, there was no bobbin case either, I ended up having to do a search and look for the replacement for that model, which took a while. And then when I did find a replacement on eBay, it was $90. So $90 for a bobbin case and a bobbin, and the machine cost me 20 bucks. That was not a good move. So definitely make sure to learn from my mistake and check the bobbin area. So you want to look to see, is the bobbin case there and does it have bobbins in it? Because some machines, particularly the vintage treadle machines, those antique ones, they can be very difficult to get a hold of the bobbins, particularly if it's something like a shuttle bobbin. You may have to look in antique stores for replacement parts for those. So bear that in mind when you are looking for your first vintage machine. Let's talk about some cosmetic things that you might see while you are sourcing a vintage machine. Now, when I'm talking vintage machines, I'm kind of talking holistically. It could be a retro machine, which I would say is probably within the last 30 to 40 years, to an antique machine, which is over 100 years, and anything in between. Although now I'm curious, is it kind of like cars where you have like a retro car and then you've got a classic car? Maybe you've got a vintage car and then an antique car. I don't know. I'm curious. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on what you think sewing machines should be. I'm really curious what people think. But anyway, I digress. Older machines have definitely seen some things and have lived. Sometimes they have been taken really good care of, they've been handed down. They are something that is definitely being cared for. Other times they have not. I saw in some of the comments on one of my last videos about people rescuing vintage and antique machines from dumpsters, recycling centers found on the side of the road. So a pretty machine is going to be a real score to find and can be a great decor if it's not working. However, a functional vintage sewing machine is absolutely priceless. You are going to see chipped paint, you are going to see scratches, you might see graffiti. The cabinet that the machine is in might be in pretty rough shape. It's really worth thinking very clearly ahead of time before you go out looking for your sewing machine, what it is that you are willing to deal with and what you are not. And no matter how pretty the machine is, if it's not working or it doesn't meet that criteria, it's better to pass on the machine than get it. You will want to pass on any machine that has a hairline or a big crack in the body of the machine, anywhere that metal has been casted. You definitely don't want to be dealing with that. And potentially, you may also want to pass on a machine that has a lot of paint flaking, particularly if it is on the sewing surface of the machine under the harp, because that paint that is chipping away is likely to snag on any of the work that you were trying to sew through, and that's probably going to drive you crazy. There are things that you can do, so you can get a cover that goes under the harp of the machine around that sewing surface. Definitely seen quilters use them. I have one and I use it for some of my quilting. But if you're just using it for day-to-day use, if the paint is chipping away, it might be better to leave that machine behind. Prices of vintage sewing machines vary hugely by location, platform, store, you name it. Folks have been able to score them in recycling centers, alleyways, dumpsters, the roadside, at the dump, and everything else in between. A higher price on a sewing machine does not always mean that it is in good condition, nor that it is in a working condition. I have gotten machines for free and I have paid about $150 for a vintage machine. Some of them that I got were about $25, like my FAF 130. That was one of the better deals that I'd ever gotten, more than one of the expensive ones. So it definitely pays to shop around, have yourself a little sewing machine, vintage sewing machine budget, and take a look at plenty of different machines that are available before settling on one. It's really hard to say what the best beginner-friendly machine is. It really depends on your personal style and taste. Machines with simple, well-documented mechanisms and parts available, even if they just do a straight stitch, can be perfect for beginners. And if you take a look at the comments on my last video about why I only use vintage machines, you will see there are lots of different brands, lots of different makes and models that vintage sewing machine enthusiasts are using. So you could take a look at those and see if any of those appeal to you. Even a great machine is usually going to need some TLC. A cleanup, some oiling, maybe replacing a belt or an O-ring are completely normal on a vintage sewing machine. And the great news is there's tons of videos online that are available that will show you how to do that too for your machine. Vintage machines are amazing companions when you want to slow down, spend less, and create more with your own hands. If you are looking for your first machine, I hope these tips help you feel confident instead of overwhelmed. It is completely okay to say no to something that you think is too much to fix. Let me know in the comments what machine you are hunting for. Take care, and I will see you in the next video.